Okay, can you guys hear me now? Cool, cool, cool. Um, now that that's out of the way, let me share the screen. And you guys can see the screen, right? Give me 1 second. I'm gonna wait for a few more people to get on and then we can start. Okay, guys, and okay, now we can get started. Um, Pivot Points 101. A lot of you guys hear me talk about L1 and H1 and R1 and S3 and S2, and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? So I'm going to give like a brief intro into that and how it works and how we use we integrate that with our trade theory. So first off, what are pivot points? Pivot points are used by professional forex traders and market makers. They basically look at these as, I guess you can say, daily highs and lows. But to finish the definition here, market makers use pivot points as well as professional forex traders to identify potential support and resistance levels. Basically, a pivot point shows where price either sold heavily or bought heavily. So the most common pivot points here are, of course, the pivot point, S1 through S3, and those are usually the degrees of support. And what I mean by degrees of support are S1 would be the strongest support, S3 would be the weakest, and the same goes with R1 through R3. Those degrees of resistance, R1 will be the highest resistance, R3 will be the weakest. Other pivots that you may have heard of, but they don't normally discuss them are monthly pivots, high pivots, which will be the daily high of a specific pair, the low, and the daily. So depending on your trade preference, whether you trade, day trade, whether you are a positional trader, these would have more significance to you than anything else, because usually if I'm in a positional trade and I'm holding it for a few months, I will be looking at the monthly pivot as opposed to whatever's going on through the course of the day. I point these pivots out because my pivot indicator shows these and most pivot indicators don't. They don't show high, low closes. They don't show monthly or daily. So those are kind of specific to the indicator that I use. Kind of to go over verbally how we spot trades with pivot points. Normally I just identify a specific pair, like say USD NOK, for example, and I say, okay, where's this pivot point? And I use that with my indicator. Let's say if I'm trading on the hour USD and NOK, and that hour candle closes and it closes below that pivot point, most of the time, that's usually a great determination for a sell call for a short. Adversely, if I'm trading on the hour or the day or the week, and that actual candle closes, as it closes above the pivot point, is usually a strong indicator for a buy. From there, once we're in the trade, we can identify the next pivot to determine a conservative take profit. For those of you that are new, you don't necessarily know my signal calls, but when I call, I usually call an ideal entry, which is usually in and around the pivot. And I usually, with sells, I call just below the pivot. With buys, I call just above. And then in a conservative take profit. So you have an ideal entry and a conservative take profit. With those two, what normally happens is the conservative take profit would usually be, in the case of a buy, it would be the R3. In the case of a sell, it would be the S3. So it kind of gives you a gauge of the supports and the resistances as they refer to price action with pivot points. Yeah, now we can go to the charts. You guys have any specific pair you want me to demonstrate what I'm actually saying with? If you do, go ahead and type a pair in the chat box and I'll take a look at it right now. Okay, Martin is saying AUD, NZD. Okay, EU, UJ. And guys, who's on, what signals do we have out now? Maybe I can take a look at the signals and kind of get my perspective on where they're going as well. We can do those later. So, okay, so far I got UJ, Aussie Kiwi, Euro Dollar, and GJ. Okay, and UJ is the current signal. Yeah, let me open up MT4 here. Pause the share really quick. Okay, I'm going to start up the share here again. And you guys can see the chart. Okay, we're looking at UJ now. And let's take a look here. And you see those lines on the right-hand side? Those are the pivot points. So if I look here, and by the way, those are Heikin Ashi candles. They aren't the traditional candlesticks, simply because I want to see the average of movement during a specific time, not just the movement. So as I don't know who circled there, I think that's probably Dayrock, but as circled here, what you see there is the L1, and that was one of the pivot points that I was talking about. That's the low of the day. Basically, it looks like it's about to bounce off the low and hold it there. This is the low 2. This is, that's L2. And what is this? That's the monthly low. And L3 here. So when we look at drawdown in terms of how far south a specific pair can go, we look at, okay, well, it could specifically hit the L3, which would be the weakest, deepest low. So it could, when we're looking at lows, we could say, okay, when we're looking at specific drawdown, it can go down to anywhere in and around 112,679 or lower, which it kind of pierced through that here. And the first take profit, let me see, that's the pivot. So my guess is Ben is looking for it to go to smash through the pivot here at 113, and then the next would be the high, the second high, which is 113,084. So for instance, if we were setting up a trade, I won't do it here because it's already set up. Like he already has the buy, and let me kind of zoom out to see. He has the take profit at the high resistance, or I'm sorry, the weakest resistance, which is R3, which I'm pretty sure lines up almost exactly with his fibs strategy. I would say that fibs and pivot points are kind of interchangeable. The biggest thing is that sometimes fibs can be a little more subjective when it comes to entries. The pivot point entry is based not off a percentage, but off actual price action. And that's kind of the biggest difference between fibs and pivot points. Let me try and take a look here at AN. Does anybody have any question or anything that I can explain, or you want to see, like, you guys want to see another example to kind of get the hang of what's going on? Change it to my template here. Get rid of the grid. Okay. So AN is actually a good example of something bouncing up. This looks like it would have been February 20th no, that would be today. So this kind of took a turn today. So basically what happened here was on the S1, which is the strongest support, it dipped through the support. Well, not through it, but it actually closed above it and then reversed. Let's see what a pivot is here. This is the pivot. So we're on H1 chart. So on the hourly, we'll be looking for this to close above it. It's already rose above it a couple times. It's above it currently, but let's say, for instance, it's 7:17. We will be waiting in and around 8 o'clock. let that candle close. Should that candle close above the pivot, from there we'd be looking again. What will we be looking for? Let me ask you guys. If it closes above that pivot point, what are we looking for? What will we be looking at as a take profit? Yeah, guys, I would be in this particular case, I will probably chop them down into smaller profits. I would take, because that's the R3. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the monthly. This is the high. I would take the high as a conservative. My TP2 would be here, and that's just the secure profits. And then my take profit 3 would be the high 4. And as you can see, don't those look eerily evenly spaced? About how much are those spaced in pips between each take profit from the pivot point? Martin says 10. Are they 10 pips away from each other, or are they, how does that look? Usually, and this is part of this is based off the quarters theory. Normally, when we're looking at pivots to base our trade theory off, we can have moves anywhere from small quarter points, which are 25 points, up to large quarter points, which are 250 pips. And that's how I grid off, or I section off things via the pivot point, is we can have a move go for 25 pips, and from those 25 pips closing either above or below the pivot point, we can actually trail for 25 pips. Say, for instance, if we had a trail stop, or we could partially close for 25 pips and let the rest of the profit ride for anywhere from 250 to 1,000 pips, depending on your patience as a Forex trader. Not everybody's going to have the same patience or want to stay in the trade for the same amount of time. Me, for instance, my average trade hold time is anywhere between 12 and 17 days. Not everybody's willing to hold a trade for 17 days. So, those things come down to preference. We got, I think Christina's on, but I don't think Christina holds a trade for more than 20 minutes. So it all depends on your style and what you're more comfortable with. Let's see. What was the other one here? Euro USD. Can't necessarily say that I hate this pair, but it's one of the, I look at this pair like I look at crude, at oil. It's just can be a little weird at times, even though news controls a lot of its movement. It's not really that's the wrong template. It's not really not really a pair that I like. But here's an example again of get out of the way. It piercing through the monthly low, which kind of sustained here. See, because nothing even averaged out through it touched it and came back, but it came through the monthly low and then bounced back to the pivot here. From the pivot, looks like Euro's going to take a little bit to get up there. May take a couple sessions, but depending on where it is, and all of these are hourly charts, but depending on where this is or where this closes, we'd probably be looking for a sell on the hourly for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. EU has been a sell. And as you can tell from the chart here, or from the Heikin-Ashi candles, it's been a pretty decent average. It's been moving. It's been pretty much a landslide on the short side, but that trend may have been broken here. But when it basically comes to when it comes to looking at pivot points and how pivot points interrelate to the rest of price action, is this is actually, I'm not saying to take this as a golden rule of how to hedge, but if you wanted a good strategy to hedge, pivot points will be a good way to hedge. Because say, for instance, if you wanted to set a limit on either side, you could set a limit above the pivot point to buy, and you could set a limit below the pivot point to sell. And that way you're not necessarily, it's not as risky a hedge as opening or executing 2 trades at the same time and closing the one that you feel like is going in your favor the most or the quickest. That would be a better hedging strategy, to open a buy and a sell either above or below the specific pivot, than to open 2 trades at the same time, a buy and a sell. But with EU here, it looks like it's going to keep making a surge. You got to remember, guys, tomorrow is President's Day. So we may see the market, especially in the New York session, that's a little sluggish. So I wouldn't expect like a ridiculous movement unless there's something that happens, or like I call it the Trump effect, unless Trump does something tomorrow on President's Day, which is not surprising, to make the market move. I don't anticipate much movement tomorrow, though, without any fundamental change. Without any news changes or without any fundamental changes going on, I don't expect much to happen, especially in the New York session. We probably won't see anything until after the Asian accumulation. So I would expect this to keep moving in the same trend, because this is retail trader sentiment. We're going to keep seeing it move up, probably to the pivot point, close to the pivot point, or close above the pivot point in the next couple hours. And these pivots are highs, and this is R1. So I mean, naturally, in it continuing in retail trader sentiment in the movement that is moving now, I would say an ideal entry would be anywhere. It would be like probably 106,315, just above the pivot, and then to take it at R1 at a safe take profit 106. I mean, you could even break this one down into a couple spaces. That could be take profit 1. That could be take profit 2. You could take the 2 highs. You could take the month and the high as take profit 1 and take profit 2, and then take profit 3 will be R1. Let's see, GJ. Anybody know the average true range of GJ? How much it moves in a day? Anybody want to take a guess? Linda says 150 pips. The ATR, or the average true range, or the average trend range of GJ is 425 pips the last time I checked. It is one of the most volatile pairs. It's one of the most, because truth be told, in the last at least 2 years, USD Lira, USD TRY, and USD NOK have been some of the most volatile pairs. I was in a trade not too long ago where USD TRY moved about 647 pips in from after the Asian session, like maybe in 2 hours in London, it moved about 640 something pips. But GJ is, and for you guys that don't know, there are crosses, there are majors, and there are exotics. Those are the three pairs or the three buckets that different pairs are put into. GJ would be, it would not be considered a major. So for a non-major pair to move that much is quite significant. Let me see the template here. Okay. So that's the low 2 month. So I would say it could get as low as the GJ could, because it's so volatile, as you can see here. In the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, it's been a sell. Went into a consolidation here where it's just back and forth and back and forth. For a lot of the pattern traders, they will probably see a flag or a pennant there and then say that it's going to be a strong buy. I can't necessarily say that because of the way that GJ moves. It could probably move as low as the low 2 and then bounce back up. So it could go as low as here, pierce through this, pierce through 139,749 and bounce as high up as the monthly high, which is 142,212. So you could probably, with GJ, because it moves, there's a lot of up and down there. A lot of the times the way that Ben trades this is he trades the top out. Like, say for instance, when you're looking at people, like look at this, for example, all of these sales and then this accumulation here. In some cases, we can trade the bottom out. Like we could set a limit here to catch the top back because we can see that range of accumulation. And you could trade that, but it's a little harder to gauge. It's more of a channel trading type deal. But when it comes to GJ and letting it ride for a day, or I guess it would be to each his own on your specific strategy, whether you scalp or whether you swing or whether it's a positional type deal. But the best way to catch GJ would be out of the gate after its accumulation or after its consolidation. So what you have to learn about which pairs that you trade is when it consolidates and when it consolidates, how much it moves in its normal movement. For a lot of pairs, London is when they move. For other pairs, like for a lot of my exotics, for the Singapore dollar, for the Hong Kong dollar, for the Turkish lira, for the Thai baht, they all move during the Asian session, where most pairs, most majors and crosses are consolidating during that time. So depending on what you're trading and how it responds to different market volatility could actually depend on when it moves or how it moves. But let me see. But yeah, here it could go. I would say that this is a buy though. It could go as low, and guys, don't freak out because he has the stop set at he has the stop set above what I'm saying it could above what I'm saying it could drop down to. Because this is an actual order, it's not active. So it could snag here, and he's expecting it, of course, to snag at the pivot point pretty much. So with it snagging at the pivot point, it could go as high up as, like I said, the monthly, which is it's a little over want to say that's a little over 275 pips, maybe a little over. So I did EU, did AN. You guys say Euro CAD, or is there any other pair? Let's look at Euro CAD. Okay. Wow, EC has all types of pivots. Damn. So S1 has not been touched in a long time. This is the lowest. This is the lowest that it's been in quite a few hours. If I were to change this chart to say like an H4, which I just did, now I'm looking at the hourly. The S3 was breached on the H4. So for the last 4 hours, this has been a sell. A pretty strong sell. And at the pivot here is looking like it's going to close, unless there's some market sentiment change for some reason. It looks like it's going to close well below the pivot. And when it does, it's going to continue as a sell. Yeah, Martin, I'll show one of my favorites is USD Lira, and I can USD try moves a lot. I usually trade it on the daily. So as you can see, one of the strategies I use is called DIDO, or day in, day out. The best, most effective way to trade DIDO is, like I said, learn when a pair moves, is average true range, and you can actually literally get in on consolidation, get out at consolidation, and take profit. So say, for instance, if we were doing that here, let's say the consolidation here, I would have to go back out of the daily chart. But I'm just, because I know how the days work, say if I got in here on, that says that was the 27th of January. Let's say I got in here and then out here. No matter what the market did throughout the course of the day, from consolidation to consolidation, I made anywhere from 120 to 145 pips. If I do the same here, I don't have as a successful day. If I close here on consolidation and I close here, I still profit. Same here. If I do that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, not only am I 100% on the day, from a day trading standpoint, when I do have a day where I either close or break even, I can actually just trend trade, not necessarily with price action, but I can trend trade with the entire day. I can say, based on what yesterday did, I can open my trade day in, day out, doing the same thing. So if yesterday was a sell, 75% of the time, the next day is going to be that sell. And if you look at it here, this proves that theory correct. This was a buy 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. So we have 8 straight days of profit. And then, okay, I lost on this day. So based on this day, say if I had a loss on this day, I'm expecting the market to be a sell, and I win on this day. And if I'm expecting to do that one more time, I lose on this day, win on this day, based on previous market movement. If I were to just set a trade plan to go forward with the next day, if that was my day trading plan, for example, which it is, if I did this for 253 days, I would be 75% correct. And that's 253 days as in trading days, not counting every day of the year, Monday through Friday, and the actual observed holidays. You can do this for 253 days, not really have a grasp on what's going on with the market, and still be anywhere from you'd be higher than 70% correct. And that's just the day in, day out strategy. But I mean, when it comes to pivots, I'm going to discuss pivots more in depth. I'm going to discuss those strategies more in depth, like day in, day out, month in, month out, week in, week out. You guys have any questions before we get out of here? Because that's pretty much it for the intro to pivots. Well, we'll ask guys, what pivots do I use daily, weekly, or monthly? Because I trade all three, I use all three. So depending on my trade plan, I have 6 trade plans. So I'm trading intraday, I'm trading interday, daily, weekly, monthly. So, and then, so that's 5. I have the daily, weekly, monthly, intraday, interday, and then positional. So my monthly may not necessarily be positional. I don't know if you guys get that, but with monthly, a positional could be, I could be closing a positional trade every month or every quarter. So every month or every 4 months. The only trades that I've done positionally in the last 7 months or so have been gold. I don't find gold to be something that I would like to trade, but well, that I don't like to day trade gold. But other than that, it's pretty cool from a positional side, because gold moves so much. If you are able to hold that trade for, a month, 2 months, 3 months, you see a significant change, or you see a significant profit. The recorded video will be, actually, you know what I'll do? I'll pin it to the group, guys. So I'll pin it to the group before I put it in the webinar archives. And I still have 2 other videos to put in the webinar archive. So I'll put all of those in tonight as soon as it finishes rendering here. But I mean, guys, as far as we're concerned, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining the webinar. For everybody that joined, if you email info@tradersedgegroup.com, I'll send you my pivot point indicator if you don't already have it. Thanks again, guys, and happy pipping.